Hey guys, it's Phone Arena. Today we're doing a video comparison between the Motorola DROID X and the Motorola DROID 2, two of the latest Droid devices out of Verizon's camp. We're pretty sure there are some people out there still wondering which handset to side with just because they both launched roughly at the same time period. On one side, you have the DROID X. The advantage it has, of course, its larger size 4.3-inch display. It also includes some other features such as the 8-megapixel autofocus camera, its 720p video recording, and of course a micro HDMI port, which makes it a very appealing media-centric device. On the other hand, you have the DROID 2, which is basically a refresh version of the original DROID. It has all the appeal and character that we found in the other one, and it has the improved keyboard. But as far as its internals are concerned, it pretty much remains faithful to what we see in DROID X, such as the 1 GHz Snapdragon processor. But the appealing part about the handset is, of course, Android 2.2 Froyo. So we'll put up both handsets and see how they stack up against one another. So let's just get into it and just talk about their designs here really quick. With the DROID X, we're really impressed, and we had that sense of awe-inspiring feelings when we first checked it out, when it first launched, just because it was something that's very refreshing versus the DROID 2's design, which basically looks just like the original DROID, but just has some subtle improvements, such as the curved edges and the better keyboard, obviously. We like the fact that both handsets exude that high level of finish, premium feel to it. The choice of materials is great. Motorola decided to stick with that metal-like exterior, which makes it feel rather durable. And at the same time, we do like the soft touch coating on the back and all around the handset to make them feel really good. The DROID X, though, comes in at 0.37 inches thick versus the DROID 2's 0.54 inches thick. But you got to give the DROID 2 some credit because it packs on a physical QWERTY keyboard. It just adds that convenience factor to it over the DROID X. But still, the DROID 2 is definitely heavier than the DROID X. We like the fact that the DROID X is a little bit more well balanced in the hand, but it does feel rather large, especially for people with smaller hands. We would definitely find the DROID 2 to be more normal size between the two. As you can probably tell, the DROID X is definitely a larger handset than the DROID 2, but with that in mind, it does come with a 4.3-inch touchscreen display versus the 3.7-inch one found on the DROID 2. So if you want something with a larger screen, then no doubt about it, the DROID X definitely has that advantage. They both still support the same resolution at 480 by 854 pixels, so details are going to be pretty top-notch, but with the DROID 2's slightly smaller screen, text is a little bit sharper, especially when you view it really up close, but you're not going to notice too much of a difference when you're viewing it from a distance of at least a foot, so you're not going to notice any improvements in that regard. Both have the same support for 16.7 million colors, but we do find that the DROID 2 has slightly better contrast ratio, and you can definitely tell with the green colors here on the top of the wallpaper. It's a little bit more rich and saturated with the DROID 2 versus the DROID X, which is a little bit washed out looking. Same thing applies when you're looking at something that's completely all black, like the background here. You can't really tell, but upon closer inspection, it's a little bit more natural looking black colors with the DROID 2 versus the DROID X. Below the touchscreens, you have on the DROID X physical buttons, which we definitely prefer versus the DROID 2's touch-sensitive ones, just because we still have a habit of accidentally hitting them. The other buttons on the sides of the phone have to go to the DROID X just because they're a little bit larger, and on top of that, they're more pronounced, unlike the DROID 2's where they're flush to the surface. Here are the volume rockers, and of course the shutter key. We definitely like the one found on the DROID X, much larger. Same thing applies to the dedicated power button. It made it a lot easier to press with the DROID X versus the DROID 2. They both have 3.5mm headset jacks, and they both offer micro USB ports for charging and connecting to computer. But the DROID X has an advantage just because it also packs a micro HDMI port, and it comes with three different microphones. You got one here for the bottom for the normal. You have one top here for noise cancellation, and the one in the back for directional one when you're taking videos. On the rear, you have the large grill on the DROID 2 for the speaker versus the small one on the DROID X. They both feature autofocus cameras. You have a 5-megapixel shooter on the DROID 2, 8-megapixel on the DROID X. Both have dual LED flash, and when you remove the back covers, give you access to the battery and also micro SD card slots, but still have a little bit frustrating just because you got to remove the battery to gain access to them. Both handsets are powered by a 1 GHz Snapdragon processor, just like some other high-end handsets we've seen of late. And honestly, it does make for a rather quick and responsive feel to the platform. As you can tell, just moving about the 7 different home screens here, it's pretty smooth on both devices. Same thing if we open up the app tray here. Scrolling is pretty good and pretty fluid too, so no problems whatsoever in that regard. Now they do utilize that motor blur-like skin on top of Android, which some people will like, some people might not. Some things specific to it's like the ability to change the size of the widgets to specific lengths. Some will find that a little bit appealing, but again, as we said, not others might just prefer a stock experience. Now the Droid X is powered by Android 2.1 as opposed to the newer offering with Android 2.2 Froyo on the Droid 2. We ran a benchmark test on the handsets, and honestly, to tell you the truth, the Droid 2 did reach better marks than the Droid X. But the overall experience, just day-to-day usage, you're not going to notice difference as both offer great performance with the platform. Now this is where things get a little bit dicey just because the Droid 2 offers a physical keyboard for typing, so most people probably gravitate towards that. But as far as touch options, you have two different methods. You have either using the multi-touch keyboard or the swipe keyboard. And as far as just the responsiveness between the multi-touch keyboard, it's pretty accurate and quick, so we didn't have any problems with that. When you switch them to landscape though, you could tell right away that the Droid 2 has just a lot more real estate and a lot more finger-friendly buttons than the Droid 2's on-screen landscape option. Some people will probably resort to using the Droid 2's physical keyboard just because it offers that tactile response. But we did find ourselves typing somewhat faster with the Droid X. Just casually typing than Droid 2, just because you need that really solid push with the Droid 2 to recognize. But nonetheless, even though the Droid X doesn't offer a physical keyboard, it offers a fantastic typing experience that's equal to the Droid 2. The web browsing experience is pretty similar on the surface, but there's one advantage that the Droid 2 offers versus the Droid X here. They both manage to load up our page very quickly, and it renders it properly too. And as you could tell, they look just exactly like you would see on a computer. We like the fact that text is automatically resized to fit the length of the page. And they offer pretty good scrolling here. As you could tell, they're very responsive. They do also have kinetic scrolling and multi-touch support, so zoom in, zoom out. But we do find that the Droid 2's inclusion of Flash 10.1 support to be a little bit better, just because it does give you that proper desktop-like feel. But we did notice that there's a slight choppiness, especially when Flash content is displayed on the Droid 2 versus something on the Droid X, which is just basically a little bit smoother as far as just moving about. But they both offer that great presentation and look, which will make anyone who loves web browsing very happy. Now don't let the 8-megapixel autofocus camera on the Droid X to fool you, just because the 5-megapixel one on the Droid 2 does an equally good job. At the top we have images taken with the Droid 2, at the bottom the ones with the Droid X. Outdoor quality is going to be the same in both handsets. You're not going to notice a difference. They produce a lot of detail, and on top of that they also had good color production. As far as the advantage with the Droid 2 is the fact that it did a better job with macro images, especially close-up. We just find that it had an easier time capturing a lot of detail with close-up images on the Droid 2 than the Droid X. And on top of that, it also performed well in low lighting conditions where you had to use the LED flash. For example, these two images here, the bottom with the Droid X looked a little bit more overexposed, while the one with the Droid 2 did look a little bit more natural. And even when we connected to the computer and downloaded the images, it still looked like the Droid 2 performed better with images indoors. Some might look at the Droid X's ability to shoot 720p as a great thing versus the Droid 2's ability to shoot in DVD-like quality. Obviously, in just numbers, the Droid X has it over the Droid 2. So at the bottom we have the video taken with the Droid X, at the top Droid 2, and you can tell just by the video that the Droid X has a little bit of a choppy look to it when just panning or moving left and right. That's just because it shoots it at a frame rate of 23 frames per second at 720p, while the Droid 2 shoots it at a rate of 29 frames per second. That's in DVD-like quality. So we definitely like the fact that it's a little bit more smooth looking with the Droid 2, but the Droid X has it as far as quality goes or amount of detail. The music player interfaces are basically the same on both handsets. There's nothing different about it just because it's the stock Android one. So it foregoes visuals or 3D effects for just functionality. As far as the quality from the speaker, we got to get to the Droid 2 just because it produces some rich tones, a little bit stronger and vibrant, especially when you turn off all the equalizer settings, so they're on the same playing field here. While the Droid X audio did sound a little bit more muted than anything else, but still strong enough, but not as good as the Droid 2. Now, if you're big on watching videos, we're going to right off the bat, it's going to have to be the Droid X for you, just because it presents itself with a larger size display, which makes it an ideal candidate to watch videos. But honestly, both handsets do a fantastic job. As far as playback, we have a video here encoded in MPEG-4 1280 by 720 resolution. As you can see, there's plenty of detail. There's no evidence of any lag or slowdown, and just makes the experience worthwhile on both handsets. But it's ultimately going to be the Droid X's larger screen that makes the difference. Calling quality has to go to the Droid 2 just because it provides for a near-flawless experience versus the Droid 2. Now, the only thing that's holding back the Droid 2 is this faint static noise that can be heard only when there's complete silence. It doesn't interfere from our conversations, but it's just noticeable. Aside from that, the earpiece produces some strong tones that made voices crystal clear and very easy for us to hear. As far as the speakerphone is concerned, we like the Droid 2's performance just because it produces richer tones and also stronger ones versus the one on the Droid X. Battery life also has to go to the Droid X just because of the fact that it offers a larger size capacity battery over the Droid 2, but you're still going to get at least 1 day's use out of both handsets if you're using it normally. If you're a big or heavy user, you're going to expect to constantly charge it. And finally, signal strength on the handsets seem pretty equal. We didn't notice any major fluctuations or drop calls with either handsets. So there you have it, guys. That's pretty much it as far as the comparison is concerned. And as we've shown you, there are some advantages and disadvantages with each handset. For the Droid 2, though, if you're going to be big on text messaging and you prefer that physical QWERTY keyboard, by all means stick with it just because it offers that convenience of the keyboard. At the same time, it even packs Android 2.2, so you'll have support for Flash 10.1, and it's one of the few handsets out there in the market right now that has Froyo on board. While the Droid X actually, is going to get the Froyo update down the road, so it's going to be on the same level as the Droid 2. But as far as design goes, we just feel like the Droid X has a refreshing look versus the Droid 2, just partly because it's been seen before with the original Droid. We like the slim look and slim packaging of the Droid X. It just makes it look very sleek all around. On top of that, it's a very multimedia-centric device versus the Droid 2. For example, it has stuff like the 8-megapixel autofocus camera, 720p video recording, the micro HDMI port to share content, and of course the large real estate with the display that makes it very attractive to buyers, especially when they're priced both at $199.99. Performance, as far as the platform is concerned, is going to be both equal on both handsets, so it's not going to factor in that much. But between the two, we'd have to say that the Droid X just feels like it's the more compelling device between the two, just because it's a little bit refreshing to see the look of it versus the Droid 2. So if you'd like to learn more about either handsets or for all latest cell phone reviews, news, specs, and information, you can check us out at PhoneArena.com.